Hello guys, and welcome to another best out of one comprehensive draft with Alan, in which we go through all our picks and plays carefully step by step, trying to make the most logical decisions, and watch a nice draft video. So let's begin. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do War of the Spark over Ranked Throne of Eldraine, simply because I'm a little bit tired of the middle decks that are being drafted in the format. But other than that, I'm happy doing a War of the Spark. It's been a while since I've done it, and it hasn't. Yeah, and I remember this set. Things about it, you can pretty much do any color combination, and nothing really pigeonholes you too much into a single archetype. However, there are some pretty busted rares and mythics like the God Eternals and Planeswalkers in this set. But sometimes you run into them, sometimes you don't. But for the most part, you don't run into them too often, and you might even end up drafting them. So War of Spark does have some problems. There's some unbeatable bombs in the set that I clearly don't like. But other than that, it's a pretty fun draft format, and a lot of the colors are very flexible, and there's a lot of removal to deal with pesky cards. So let's begin. Alright, so let's go through our decisions carefully. Alright, so pick one, pack one. What are we looking for? First step is to identify the best cards in the pack. Casualties of War is a really powerful sorcery. Just being able to maybe even target 2 or 3 things that the opponent has out is really powerful. Most likely you are going to target a creature, a planeswalker, a land, or even an enchantment that has annoying benefits against you that the opponent is playing. Definitely a very powerful card. In terms of flexibility, is not too great. Does commit you to 2 colors off out of the bat, black, and double green. And I don't think this card is that powerful that it will win you the game. You can still lose this by playing this card in your deck. It's not like an unbeatable bomb, but other than that, it is a powerful removal spell. It doesn't have a permanent effect that generates a ton of value, like cards like Finality of Glory, or Commence the Endgame, or Liliana, or Nissa, or so forth. It's just a one-time removal spell that usually targets a creature, planeswalker, land, enchantment, etc., which is very powerful, but it's not Busted Bomb. Definitely a top-tier card if you are in these 2 respective colors right off the bat. Looking at the uncommons, what do we have? We have Bond of Insight, which is excellent in any, in most likely the blue-red spells, non-creature spells deck. It's also great in blue-black, which tends to play lots of instances and sorceries. Just being able to recast an instance and sorcery card back from your graveyard and put it back in your hand is just pretty excellent. You do need to go heavy spells, so it does kind of commit you to an archetype right off the bat. But definitely a solid card. Don't know if I would build around this in a pick one, pack one scenario. It's not a bomb. In fact, it's just an excellent card in case you're ready in a blue, red, or blue-black spells heavy matters deck, and therefore the Bond of Insight can generate a ton of value. But I don't think it's a pick here. And I would definitely prefer maybe even choosing Casualties of War over it. But these both are kind of same in power level. I'd say the Bond of Insight is slightly less. But it's definitely a lot more flexible than the Casualties of War. But both of these cards are solid and excellent in their respective colors and archetypes. And another great uncommon that we're looking at is Rescue Sphinx. Definitely solid in any blue deck. Goes well in blue Proliferate decks. Goes well in blue control decks. Just a nice aggressive flyer in the air. The reason why I say it's good in a blue control deck is because you can bounce back broken planeswalkers like Kaya or Kazmina back into your hand or anything else, which is really nice. Having a 4 mana for 3 flyers is really nice. Yeah, just being able to return a planeswalker, replay it with full loyalty, or retrigger and enter the battlefield effect seems pretty solid. It doesn't commit us to an archetype, but it is heavy blue, which if you're already playing in a blue deck, you might as well commit a little bit more heavily to it. And so the double blue, to me, I don't think it's too big of an issue, other than the fact that you need to be more committed to the blue color. But overall, pretty solid evasive creature, a nice win condition, something that the opponent needs to remove, and has a lot of upside when it enters the battlefield, and is also a nice evasive threat that the opponent needs to take care of. So I'm liking the Rescuer Sphinx here. There's also Omnixilus, which is only good in a red-black aggro deck. I would never play this in a more black, slower, grindier control deck like black-blue or black-green, because most of the time you're really just looking to maybe just destroy a target creature and make the opponent lose 2 life. It's a card that you want to play if you are already going really aggressive and your win condition is to deal a lot of damage to them ASAP, and Omnixilus is definitely excellent in that type of archetype, but does commit us to that archetype again. It's not great in any control deck. You don't want your opponents to be drawing cards at all, especially if you're looking to play a slower game. They're just going to outvalue you with the cards that they draw. But definitely a solid contender in an aggressive black-white or black-red deck, depending on how aggressive you want to be. And you definitely want to be in the most aggressive deck to play this. Otherwise, you're giving the opponent way too much value by letting them draw 2 cards. I mean, you can use it on yourself, of course, on like maybe in a mass creature, so that can be pretty nice. But you tend to want this to destroy an opponent's annoying blocker or creature out of the way, and dealing damage to them. Sorry, just a sneeze there. But for the most part, it does commit you to an archetype right away. Looking at the commons, which ones really stand out? I am a big fan of Callous Dismissal as a nice interaction spell in blue. Definitely solid, pretty cheap. Just being able to bounce a card back to their hand and amass 1 is nice. Sometimes it tends to find targets such as creature tokens, so it can act as a removal spell as well. So overall, I think in this pack we are just really looking at Callous Dismissal and Rescuer Sphinx. I could choose the other cards, but they do commit me to archetypes right off the bat, and most likely ties me up into 2 color. Bond of Insight being best in blue-red or blue-black. Nexus Cruelty being best in black-red, or it can be playable in black-white. Casualties of War is a no-brainer, only green-black. So I think I want to stick with single color here, and I think the card that has the most value is just the Rescuer Sphinx. Just putting out a nice evasive creature onto the battlefield, bouncing back creatures, re-triggering entered battlefield effects, resetting loyalty on the planeswalkers is just really powerful. So I think it's a choice here over the Callous Dismissal. If Callous Dismissal was a removal spell for sure, I might consider it over the Rescuer Sphinx. But given that it's not, and it's just a bounce spell which has a potential removal upside on a zombie army creature token, I'd rather just take the creature just to serve as a win condition. And yeah, just a nice, efficient, powerful flyer. So yeah, let's take the Rescuer Sphinx and choose blue as perhaps our primary color and move on from there. Right, follow up with the Rescuer Sphinx. Which cards are good? Not a big fan of Teo. In white, you are looking to be more aggressive. This is more of a card that you want to play in a controlling deck. Sure, you can create a bunch of walls, but in white, your win condition tends to just to race the opponent. In Ward of Spark, most of the win conditions are in fact to just get your opponent's life point to 0. This could be feasible in maybe a blue-white mill deck. Maybe if you draft a bunch of Ashioks, you can put up the Tails Shield Mage to protect your planeswalkers while you mill them. But that tends to usually be a fringe strategy, because you would require not only Teo the Planeswalker, but lots more creatures to protect those that Ashiok to mill the opponents. So not a big fan of this. Bolt Bend is a card you most likely just want to play in green-red due to the fact that you want to really just cast this for 1 mana. Casting this for 4 is quite expensive, still feasible, but it is quite situational, and but a fine card in green-red, but we're not in those colors. Leyline Prowler stands out as a powerful uncommon. Just a Death Touch lifelinker is really excellent, and the ability to ramp with any color makes this a solid core card in any green black multicolor deck. So definitely the most powerful uncommon here in this pack. Looking at our commons, which ones stand out? Wanderer Strike is definitely excellent. Quite expensive. It is quite slow, but if you can pull this off, you can exile most likely a big creature and then proliferate, which is quite good. Does tend to be quite expensive, however, again. Yeah, so the opponent could have like counter spells and balance tricks, but sometimes you just need a removal and to take care of a big creature when the opponent is tapped out, and this is quite excellent. What else stands out in the common? There's Band Together, which is a solid removal spell. Definitely cheap and efficient. Does require you to have Death Touchers onto the battlefield or creatures with enough power to fight, which would go pretty well with Rescuer Sphinx, because 4 or 3 power usually tends to take off some creatures. It's also cheap and efficient as well, and it's also instant speed. But again, you would rather have some creatures with this first to do some work, and so yeah, I think those are the only 3 considerations. I wouldn't consider a Sky Theater Strix, even though we're in blue. I think this card is not that great. Like a 2-mana 1/2 flyer that has the potential of dealing 2 damage, but requires you to have a little bit of a build around first, isn't that great. Even the 2 toughness doesn't block too well, and I mean, it can be a fine one-of, but it's not amazing. So it's just these 3: Band Together, Leyline Prowler, and Wanderer Strike. I think I'd rather take the more flexible option, being Wanderer Strike and Band Together, over the Leyline Prowler, because Leyline Prowler commits us into 2 colors more heavily, while these 2 gives us more flexibility and openness in case we move into those colors. Which one pairs well with Rescuer Sphinx? Like Wanderer Strike is nice. It can help it proliferate. Blue-white flyers is definitely a good archetype. Band Together could also be great with Rescuer Sphinx. A nice giving leeway to a nice potential blue-green proliferate deck. So yeah, I think both of these cards could would pair well with the Rescuer Sphinx. In terms of color options, white tends to be weak in this format, so it might just be the Band Together. Also, Band Together being much more cheaper is excellent. Does require you to have creatures on the battlefield before you can pull the trigger on this, but green tends to have a lot of big creatures and Death Touchers, such as the I forgot the 3-mana 2/2 Death Toucher that goes well with this Band Together. So I'm looking forward to this Band Together just being a cheaper removal spell, and I prefer cheaper. 5 mana is a lot for Wanderer Strike. Wanderer Strike is excellent, but sometimes you'd rather just have a cheaper removal right away so you can potentially double spell. And yeah, blue-green is a solid archetype, and we could just abandon blue, move into green, whatnot. So yeah, definitely liking the Band Together here, so I think I'm just going to take it. And now what do we have? Augur is only great if you are heavy spells, which we don't know if we are yet. Bond of Flourishing is okay, not amazing. Like, sure, 2 mana, gain 3 life, find the card that you need. You're still paying 2 mana. You're still using 2 mana just to replace this. Could find you a playable, but not really exciting at all. Looking at the commons, I think the best commons are just in green and white. There's Lava Enforcer as an excellent, probably the best white common in this set. 1 mana, 1/2 that can tap down target creatures. The mana cost 2 or greater just for 1 mana is excellent. You can use this defensively or offensively. There's Divine Arrow as a decent removal spell. Deals 4 damage is quite a lot, and it can deal with any attacking or blocking creature. The opponent can play around it, of course, But against an aggressive opponent, they do want to push damage, and you can punish them with the Divine Arrow when they least expect it. There's also Arlen's Wolf as an okay attacker. Pretty efficient at 3 mana as a 3/2 that can't be blocked by power 2 or less. But it's an okay card nonetheless. It doesn't really stand out like these two. And I think the choice here has to be Law Rune Enforcer to just keep my options open. Like, I could just choose the Arlen's Wolf, keep green as a primary color, but you never know what's more open. And given that these 2 white cards are passed, it seems that white was open. It seems to be open. We did pass up a Wanderer Strike, but nothing else. So nothing too scary. We can always pick up more. I mean, too great. I mean, we can always pick up more Wanderer Strikes, etc. So yeah, I'm liking the Law Rune Enforcer just as an efficient creature. Fine card to start a white as a primary or secondary color with. So let's take it here. So now with our Bant colors, what we're looking at, Dreadmalkin's okay, nothing amazing. Mayhem Devil is an excellent payoff for the black-red sacrifice deck, but those are 2 colors we haven't picked up yet. War Screecher is a decent 2-drop in white, definitely solid when you can put counters on this creature. The late game ability is pretty nice as well, just being able to pump other creatures +1/+1. Definitely a solid 2-drop that I don't mind having multiple copies of. And what else do we have? We have Contentious Plan as a nice cantrip, in case we want to set up a blue Proliferate deck. Definitely one of the core cards in Proliferate decks. And what else do we have? The commons that really stand out here is probably just a Pollen Bright Druid. Just a 2-mana card, just a 2-drop card with an excellent ability of putting counters on target creature and proliferating. Seems pretty good. I definitely think it beats Contentious Plan, even though this cantrips and draws a card, because it puts a body onto the battlefield which you can potentially chump or trade. And it just has the ability to put a counter to start to proliferate synergies to go on. And there's also Vivian's Grizzly, but I think I would rather take my first Pollen Bright Druid over the Vivian's Grizzly, simply because this has a lot more upside. Vivian's Grizzly is decent in the late game, but the fact that I can only search out creatures or planeswalkers can be quite problematic when you need to find removal spells, but it's a solid one of. So yeah, I think it's just really between these 3. And in terms of power level, I think the Pollen Bright Druid just has a lot more upside than the War Screecher or Contentious Plan. The ability to proliferate everything is nice. The ability to put a 1/1 counter is nice. Just being cheap at 2 mana and putting out a 1/1 body seems pretty excellent. So, yeah, I think, I mean, and either way, it goes well in a white-green Proliferate deck, in a blue-green Proliferate deck. So, still keeps our options open. And I think this card is really excellent and solid. So, let's take it. And now there's a Chinese Primate, in case we pick up some life gain. The life gain archetype is most likely in white-green, white-black, and we haven't picked up any black cards lately to justify taking it. It can still be fine in white-green, because green has some life gain, again, but not too much compared to white-black. There was the Bond of Flourishing that we passed up on, and there's also Centaur Nurture that we can end up taking. But overall, it takes a little bit more work to get going. And at the end of the day, and in this set, there's not really a lot of life gain unless you are specifically in black-white. There's also War Screecher, which is fine. Again, same argument. Thunder Drake is excellent. If you have a lot of cheap spells in your deck, definitely great in, blue-red spells decks, blue-black spell decks. But the fact that your second spell can be anything besides a non-creature spell makes this pretty good. Like, you can cast Thunder Drake on turn 5 or turn 6, then follow up with a 1-drop or 2-drop, and it still gets a counter. So definitely an excellent card. A great evasive flyer as a 4-drop. Then we have a bunch of black cards and the gateway in case we want to splash. So the cards that I'm looking at in this pack currently are either the Ajani's Primate, the War Screecher, and Thunder Drake. Ajani is good if you have a lot of life gain, but in a deck with not a lot of life gain or just 1 or 2, I don't think it's worth building around this card. It's definitely not a bomb. It can definitely be easily removed. You don't want to commit. You don't want to pick this card and then draft a bunch of cards just to give this a bunch of counters. Since it's just an okay common, it's not a bomb by any chance, so it does take a little bit more work to get going. Just a fine card. I don't think it's great or excellent. Doesn't really have much evasion. So I think it's really the War Screecher and the Thunder Drake. The War Screecher provides another 2-drop in case we move into white, white-green. The Thunder Drake provides another 4-drop, which I don't mind as well if we move into green-blue. In terms of power level, which one do I like more? I definitely think I like the Drake more. It can be quite a scary threat. It's easy to grow in the late game. Definitely can be a nice win condition. War Screecher is a fine 2-drop as well, but I don't see this as a really powerful win condition. Like, you need to put a little bit more counters on it to make this a little bit more scary. Like, you do want to pick up more cards that give creatures counters, so you can at least make this scary, while the Thunder Drake just requires you to cast a second spell each turn, which is much more easier to grow. It is a little bit more expensive than War Screecher by far, but I think in terms of power level, the Thunder Drake just stands out, and we could use another 4-drop, to be honest. We could, even if we take this, we could still be in green-white. War Screechers do tend to wheel, and I didn't find passing up on one, but Thunder Drake is just a solid 4-drop that I'm happy to have in any green-blue Proliferate deck. So yeah, let's take it here. And did we get rewarded? We did pick up a War Screecher in case we missed out on the first one. There is a Battlefield Promotion as a way to put a target counter on the target creature, gain some life, and potentially get a trade in your favor. It's more situational though, so not a big fan of this. We do have a Courage in Crisis as a means to put a counter on the creature and then Proliferate. So a lot of choices here. I think it's just between these three. I think I'd rather take the first 2-drop over the Battlefield Promotion, and I think I would rather have the creature over the Courage in Crisis. The Courage in Crisis only plays well when you have a lot of proliferating going on in your deck, which we don't know if that's the case. Like maybe the entire draft won't give us enough ways to put counters on creatures, and Courage in Crisis just gives a creature +2/+2 at 3 mana, and that creature might just be removed right away, and that can be a problem. And these tend to wheel. I don't really want multiples of these. Maybe just one copy is enough, because sometimes in limited you tend to just want to play lots of creature spells so you can affect the battlefield too often. This doesn't give us a body. It does enhance the creature, but again, it doesn't really produce a body at 3 mana. Sometimes you have this card in your hand and you have a small creature and nothing else, and you're kind of forced to use this on 3 just to play on curve. But yeah, I think I like to have my first 2-drop in white, that being War Screecher. Gives me a lot more options to move into either green-blue, green-white, or even just blue-white flyers. So yeah, let's just keep our options open here. Take the War Screecher. Now what? Dovin's Veto as our uncommon. Don't think this card is really that great in limited. It's best in a sideboard situation as a fine 1-of in white-blue. There's a Martyr for the cause, which can be a nice way to trigger the proliferating in case we pick up a bunch of counters. I think it's a fine 2-drop. I don't think it's amazing by any means. Definitely, this card definitely could be a problem sometimes. Like sometimes you don't want this creature to die, and the opponent just kills it off early, and you don't get the proliferate synergies to go off. I mean, a 2/2 is not that amazing as well. I mean, it's a 2/2 with an upside, which is pretty nice. Not gonna lie. So I mean, I really can't complain about this. I don't even know what I'm talking about. It's a pretty decent 2-drop. In green, I think I'm just looking at the Snare Spinner over the Warscale Croc. Croc has a nice hexproof ability, but it doesn't have any evasion. The toughness levels is pretty low. I wouldn't play this unless I have a deck with lots of Trusted Pegasus to give this flying. Otherwise, even putting a counter on this seems pretty weak, especially when the opponent can just trade off for this easily. And 5 mana is a lot. I think I'm just looking at the Snare Spinner and the Martyr for the cause. Martyr will hedge us more into white. Proliferate. It's still a fine 2-drop. Snare Spinner would put us more into green with the Pollen Bright Druid and Band Together. So which one do I prefer more? Which colors do I prefer? I think green is a more powerful option with these first 2 picks, Pollen Bright Druid and Band Together. That I don't mind leaning slightly more green with the Snare Spinner. And it's a fine 2-drop. You do need blockers against flyers. Putting counters on this is pretty nice as a fine blocker in the early game. The Martyr Cause would move us more into white. Gives us a nice 2-drop to proliferate in case we need it in the late game or the early game. But overall, the power level isn't that great compared to green, as from these 2 picks. So yeah, I think I like green more just because it has the removal spell in it, and I would rather. And given that fact that it has a removal spell, I'm more inclined to likely prefer it over the white. So yeah, I think I like the Snare Spinner here. Now what? We got a bunch of blue cards, but I'm not a big fan of Augur unless we're playing in either blue-red or blue-black, which it does not seem to be the case. We seem to be playing in a more creature-heavy deck from our pick 1, pack 1 choices, so I can kind of forgo this. Crushing Descent, 4 mana is a lot. The opponent can easily pay 2. The Mass 2 is alright, it's not amazing, so meh. No Escape, only counters Planeswalkers and creature spells. Nothing amazing, but sometimes you find a target. Return Nature's a sideboard card, don't care. So this pack is pretty much a whiff. I don't think any of these cards really matter too much. Like, No Escape is better off in a blue controlling deck, just because you can leave more mana up with other instant speed spells to give this as an option to fire off. But we're looking to play more on curve and just beat down from the looks of it. So I don't mind the Gateway Plaza as a way to fix in case we open up like a powerful removal spell in another color that we would like to play in, like an Onyx's Cruelty. This can help fix. Does come in tapped, so it does take some time, but it can be a decent turn 2 play, and I'm fine having 1, so I can't complain here. Let's take it. Now what? Ooh, there's a Teo's Light Shield to help the proliferates. Other than that, nothing amazing. Sahil's Silver Ring is expensive, 4-drop that I don't care too much about. So yeah, I think I like the Teo's Light Shield. Pivot more into white, so we can perhaps stick with a white green Proliferate deck. Definitely seems solid. Especially playing the flyers. And now what? Still Spark Reaver in his pack, so black seems fairly open. Don't think this matters too much. Like what? A Skythier Strix. We could have Bulwark Giant as a filler 6-drop. Nothing too amazing. Maybe just take the Strix. Hopefully I don't end up playing it. But just in case I end up in blue-green, maybe this can find a couple of counters and it can be an annoying threat in the early game. So let's put in the sideboard for now. Actually, let's just put in the main deck. Now what? Don't think I'm playing any of these. Steady Aim, sure. Oh, there's still a Dreadmawk in this pack. So black seem fairly open, but none of the black cards seem so overpowered that I would have taken over these cards. In fact, these were just better commons, to be honest. And I don't mind a Vivian. Looks like green. It should just be our primary color. Looks like green is quite open in this pack either as well. I like having one of these as a nice late game mana sink. Does play awkward against removal spells, however, but sometimes you do need to use this in the late game to find some creatures to flood the board and beat down on your opponent. And yep, Vivian's Grizzly is a solid 3-drop, so don't hate it here. Ray Hazel, Stay Aim, maybe take an Honor. Alright, so looking at the second pack, what are we looking for? It looks like green is definitely our primary color. Green is a really nice color in this set. Green does have a lot of ways to fix mana and splash for a third color in case it happens. We could be in whites, we could be into blue, who knows. I'm more leaning towards blue just because we tend to have a lot more powerful flyers as curve toppers, but I don't mind moving to white if blue isn't open. Simply Law Reinforcer is decent, with a decent 2-drop, and Teo as a way to put a counter and start proliferating. But overall, with green as our core color, it looks like we might just be moving to a proliferate deck, given that white-green is proliferate and blue-green is a proliferate archetype. So, yep, let's move on to pack 2. And what do we pick up? Well, Commence the Endgame is a very powerful card. I don't think I can call it busted, but is definitely up there. Just at 6 mana, being able to draw 2 cards and then make a creature onto the battlefield at instant speed can surprise the opponent and ambush them. And also can't be countered, which is excellent. In green-blue, you tend there's definitely a lot of ramp creatures that can get us to commence the end game. Definitely a powerful card that I'm happy to pick up. What else is there? The Wanderer is an excellent card in white, if we decide to take the white route. Does have some problems, the fact that it can only target creatures with power 4 or greater. But regardless, from my experience, this card does tend to find plenty of targets in a limited environment in this format, simply because there's a lot of amass tokens that grow, a lot of creatures that get a lot of counters from Proliferate. Wanderer just takes care of those creatures right out of the bat, and also the versatility, prevent all non-combat damage, is pretty excellent. Just prevents your creatures from getting shot down by damage-based removal spells like Band Together or Jaya's Greeting. Definitely a great card. What else is there? There's a Wanderer Strike as, again, another excellent removal spell. I already explained it in the first part of the Pack 1. Over between Wanderer and Wanderer Strike, I might just be leaning Wanderer, just because you can pull this trigger twice or more, and sometimes, let's say you're playing against a heavy green deck, or a red with high power, you can just exile those cards right away. And again, this format, the creatures tend to grow, so you tend to find lots of targets. Also, the first ability is pretty relevant, and this is another annoying target that the opponent needs to take down. So yeah, definitely like the Wanderer over Wanderer Strike. And looking at the commons, besides Wanderer Strike, what is there? I mean, a bunch of filler cards. So yeah, I think it's between Commence the Endgame, Wanderer Strike, or the Wanderer. And I think I'm just leaning towards Commence the Endgame as a solid blue card in the late game. Does cut our 1, 2, and 3. Does cut a 1, 2, and 3 drop if we decide to move into blue, but I think it's just too powerful to pass up. Does play better if you have a lot more mass cards going on, but we can always pick those up. Yeah, I think it's just really good. Otherwise, Wanderer and Wanderer Strike would be pretty excellent, but does commit us to white heavily. So yeah, I think if once we take Commence the End Game, we need to start picking up more early game and 3 drops. Definitely a very powerful card that I don't mind taking here. So yeah, let's go. And did we get rewarded? Not really. I mean, the Spark is fine, is excellent, but not in our colors. There's Domri's Ambush, which we can splash for. Seems like a pretty powerful card. Just putting a counter onto a token creature and using it to dish out damage is excellent. But again, we need more mana fixing for this. There's another Law Rune Enforcer, which is great. It does mean that we did pass up the Wanderer and Wanderer Strike, so we got a little bit punished if we take this. I would prefer another Law Rune over Rising Populace, to be honest. What else is there? Omnix's Cruelty is an excellent splash card if, again, we want to splash it, but we do need to pick up more mana fixing, which we haven't gotten yet. We have some decent green cards. New Horizons, pretty solid. Just as a way to enchant a land, put a 1/1 counter on a target creature, and also ramp. Arlen's Wolf is a nice evasive attacker at 3. There's a Guild Globe as a way to cantrip and fix our mana. So lots of options here. The most powerful card in this pack is definitely Omnix's Cruelty, but we aren't moving to black. We could potentially splash for it, but we don't have any fixing right now other than the Gateway Plaza. We could pick it up for a speculative splash, but maybe it's just best to just stick with 2 colors for now. Same argument, Domri's Ambush. There's a Law Rune Enforcer in case we want to give up on this immensely endgame that we picked up and just move into white. It's still possible, perhaps, but there's still some solid cards like Arlen's Wolf in this pack, New Horizons. I think Law Rune Enforcer is definitely better than Arlen's Wolf, but I don't think the power level is that great that Arlen's Wolf isn't a solid 3-drop. Like, Arlen's Wolf is definitely a very solid attacker that I don't mind placing in this deck. Do I pick it over New Horizons? Perhaps. Like, I do like the splash cards like Omnix's Cruelty, but if we can stick with 2 cards, we should find enough removal. and I don't really want to make my mana awkward just to support these colors, unless I really have to. And therefore maybe it's just fine to stick with 2 colors for now, make a more easier deck that's castable without messing up our mana too much. So yeah, I definitely don't mind the Orange Wolf as a solid 3-drop, or New Horizons, or a Guild Globe. I would be a little bit punished if white was more open, but maybe we can just pick up enough green cards that, you know, this white-blue does work out, because I don't want to just give up on commence the endgame in these blue flyers by picking the Law Rune Enforcer. I think we're really sticking to heavy green over canceling green just to move into blue-white, because we do have Band Together again as removal. So yeah, I think I'm just going to take the evasive attacker here. Orange Wolf seems decent. Let's just take it here. And now what? Divine Arrow could have been a fine removal spell in white. Erratic Vision's an okay 2-drop that I don't hate. There's also Giant Growth as a cheap pump spell for interaction. So now what? This is another white card being passed up. It's not amazing. It's fine. So, I mean, but white does indicate that white is clearly more open, but we did pass up on a Law Rune Enforcer and Wanderer Strike Array, so maybe the ship has sailed. Maybe just fine picking up an Erratic Visionary or Giant Growth as decent cards. And I don't mind the Visionary. It's a fine 2-drop blocker in the late game. It can definitely do some good work by trading off lands for, you know, potential playable spells and looting away to find answers. Giant Growth would also be pretty decent as a fine 1-of pump spell. Sometimes you can catch your opponent off guard with that 1 extra green mana, and you can get a favorable trade in your favor. But yeah, I don't mind the Erratic Visionary. We could use some more 2s, and Sky Theater Strix is replaceable. So yeah, I don't hate it. I think I'm just gonna take the Visionary here. And yeah, sure, I do like myself a Jace's Triumph. Fibblethip is okay. Like a 1-mana 1/1 doesn't really do much. It's most of the time it's not going to be a target of a spell anyways, because why would a opponent use up an entire removal spell on just a 1/1? At the very least, it's just a chump blocker and a 2-mana 1/1 that replaces itself. Nothing special, nothing amazing. Jason's Triumph looks pretty solid as a way to draw cards at 3 mana. So I'm liking that. There's actually a Skulker, which I don't mind as a fine 1-of, as a way in the late game to maybe pressure the opponent and try to attack the opponent. In case the opponent has too many blockers, you can use this to try to win a stalemate, perhaps. But we do have flyers already that can try to get the job done. But I wouldn't mind one of these in the late game. There's a Spellkeeper Weird, which is excellent with our Commence the Endgame and Band Together. But it's better off in a deck where you can cast a lot of instant speed or sorcery spells more consistently. In green-blue, you tend to just want to play lots of creatures, grow them with Proliferate and counters, and kill the opponent off the spot. So Spellkeeper Weird can be quite awkward, i.e. weird, in a deck with lots of creatures, because this is just going to stick into the battlefield until you find your removal spells to sacrifice this and recast it. So yeah, I don't think it's a Spellkeeper Weird here. So I think it's either Jace's Triumph or New Horizons, and Divination's always good in limited, so I can't complain. Jace's Triumph just helps us in the late game or early game as a nice 3-mana spell to draw us into our cards. And I like New Horizons too, but I'm fine with this being a 1-of, so I don't have to take this as highly. I think Jace's Triumph just has a much more unique effect that we need, so let's take it here. Alright, and now what? Looking at the best card in this pack is probably just the Pollenbright Druid, which is an excellent card that I don't mind a second one of. I can take multiple of these. Again, just putting counters and proliferating is just really powerful. So let's just get the white cards out of here. I don't think we're playing white. I think we're just going to stick with blue-green for now. It seems a lot more powerful given that we pick up Commence the Endgame in these late-game flyers. Let's put the interaction spells to the side. Put our cards that we're most likely going to play on curve like this. Yeah, I think it's a Proliferate Druid over the Crow Stinger or Giant Growth. If this wasn't a pack, it's probably just a Crow Stinger as a 3-drop and a nice card that goes along with Band Together. But definitely Proliferate Druid is good to as ways to put counters and to proliferate. So let's take it here. And now what? Don't think I want to play a second Gateway Plaza. It can be quite awkward, but we really have nothing here. Storm the Citadel. I don't think this card's too playable. It's really expensive. And the second ability, destroying artifacts or enchantments, don't come up too often. Can be a way to close out the game, I guess, but it doesn't really give your creatures trample, unlike the card Overcome in M20. So it's kind of bad. The opponent can just chump block, and this doesn't really get too much value. So I think this is really our first bad pack. I don't think we're ever going to play Nissa's Triumph, but we could just take it for the sideboard for gems. I don't think I'm ever playing Wall of Runes. Maybe is there a reason we could end up back in the white? Probably not. And this isn't even that amazing. Anything we're going to splash for? Not really. I think we're just going to take the Nissa's Triumph for gems. I don't want to ever play second Gateway Plaza, even the splash, so let's just put it in the sideboard. Okay. So now what? There's another Thunder Drake, which I could use another 4-drop as an excellent win condition and a creature that we can grow in the late game. So again, Spellkeeper Weird is only good if you have a lot of instances and sorceries, which we are looking to be more of a heavy or creature deck, so this can be awkward. Like, it's fine to maybe fetch out again a Commence the in-game, Jace's Triumph and Band Together, but you want to play this in a more controlling creature light deck, I guess. Simply because we want to play creatures every turn that can attack through and block 2 incredibly well, and then win the game with creatures. And this plays better in a deck where you win the games with more spells like black, blue, and red, blue. Because this isn't even a good attacker, it's an okay blocker, and you're going to sacrifice this, makes you lose a blocker anyways, just for a better instant speed and instant or sorcery spell. I wouldn't mind one of this deck, but I think Thunder Drake is just much more important that we just take it here. Another Strix. Don't think I'm playing double Strix. Just pretty overall mediocre card. We don't really have a lot of non-creature spells again. A 2 toughness is pretty bad. And yeah, it's only good if we have a lot of counters, which we currently don't have a lot of ways to put counters on, and just having one is fine. So I guess another sideboard card for the gems. Maybe we play a Croc as a filler 5-drop. Hopefully not. I think the other 5-drops of higher toughness could just be better replacements, but this is pretty much over nothing. Ooh, we wouldn't mind a Guild Globe. Now we can potentially splash for a 3rd color with the Gateway Plaza and the Guild Globe. We could pick up removal spells like Omnix's Cruelty or Wanderer Strike, and then if we pick up a New Horizons, this can be really excellent. Also another non-creature spell to synergize with maybe some Skythier Strix, a nice cantrip, cheap spell to go with the Thunder Drake. So let's just take it here. Don't think we're playing anything. Don't ever think I'm playing double Wardscale Croc, so it doesn't really matter here. Ooh, wouldn't mind Ashyak Skullking. I think I actually prefer that over Wardscale Croc just because of the higher toughness levels. It can be utilized to block, better blocker, a much more relevant late game ability that can cheese out some attacks on the opponent. So I definitely think I'm going to replace the Croc over this. So, alright. Moving on to the 3rd pack, where we're looking for. We do have quite a hole at 3, so we can utilize some more. We definitely need a lot more removal. We only have 2 interaction spells right now. Wouldn't mind taking a powerful removal spell that we can potentially splash for with a Guild Globe and Gateway Plaza in order to give us a lot more interaction. But overall, the creatures look solid. The 4 slot looks solid. We could use one more Curve Topper at the top end. We could use more Proliferates. Maybe we opened up an Evolution Sage, which would definitely be the correct card for this type of archetype, which can be incredibly powerful. So let's move on to pack 3. And did we get rewarded? Not really. There is a God Eternal Bantu, which is busted. Is there any way we can splash for this? Probably not. We do need a lot more mana fixing, unfortunately, and we just don't have it. So I guess this is a bit of a bummer. Um, so I kind of hate that we have to forego this. There's Yang Yangu as a solid 3-drop, which I wouldn't mind since we have a whole F3. Nice way to put counters on the creatures and use and ramp, and using the ability to ramp as well with the creatures with counters on them, and also splash for a color. So is there any way we're playing Gaia Eternal Bond too? Like, probably not. It's going to take a lot of work. We're already playing some double blue cards, which can get in the way. Not a lot of double green, but the double blue can really interfere with just splashing for a double black card. But Bantu is definitely a very powerful card. It's probably the weakest god, but still excellent with the menace ability. Just being able to draw cards by sacrificing permanents and just making this a creature that you can't really kill unless you discard from the hand, from the top of the deck, or transmutation it. So yeah, so Jiang Yangu would be a pretty solid 3-drop in our deck. We are playing lots of creatures, so this does find a lot of targets to put counters on. Nice way to ramp. Nice card to utilize for ramp. Nice card to utilize to fix and splash. And at the commons, what are we looking at? There's Omnix's Cruelty, which again we could splash for, and we are kind of lacking interaction, so that's a great consideration. There's Jaya's Greeting, but I think I prefer Omnix's Cruelty over it, just because it can kill bigger creatures. Even though it doesn't scry for one, it kills bigger creatures, and that's what we just need. We could just pick another Proliferate Druid as another excellent 2-drop, which can just put a counter onto a creature, or potentially help us proliferate even more. Given that we've taken 2, I think it's fine. We should have enough proliferation with 2. We could use another extra one, but right now I think the solid card here is Jiang Yangu. Like, I wouldn't mind splashing for another interaction spell, but we do have a hole at 3 that we can use. I don't want to really get out of my way too much to fix when we don't have much fixing besides Gateway Plaza and Guild Globe. And we could pick up, other interaction spells like Totally Lost or Callous Dismissal. Totally Lost is a fine one-of. I don't mind playing just as an interaction spell that's expensive. Not the best one, but sometimes you just want to stick with our colors. And yeah, Jiang Yangu is a pretty good card that in this deck, so let's just take it.
It's a dog-eat-villain world out there.
That's correct. And now what? I think the only cards we're going to play are the ones in common. Contentious Plan is an excellent cantrip at 2 mana. Just 2 mana, proliferate, draw a card. It's excellent by itself, pretty cheap. Nice ways to trigger proliferate. Solid card overall. There's another Thunder Drake, but we already have 2. I think 2 should be fine. The card I'm looking at most likely is just here, the Bloomhoke. Plays a nice 4 mana 4/4 body, which is difficult to take care to, which is excellent in this format. Also, just proliferating everything is really solid. I think I prefer that over Contentious Plan, even though this is a little bit more expensive. 4/4 bodies are really nice, again, in this format, and just being able to proliferate looks excellent. We could take another Thunder Drake, but I think that's kind of overkill. I think 2 should be enough, and we already have like 3 flyers that can kind of push through for some damage. So yeah, I think I like the Bloomhoke. Like, Contentious Plan is nice, but we do have Bright Druid in the early games to do some counter putting and proliferating. I think having a 4/4 body and proliferating is just better. We could use another 4-drop, even though it is getting a little bit stacked. We could use another one, so I'm happy taking it here. Ooh, okay. And now what's in this pack? The card that stands out the most is definitely probably one of the best commons in the set. Aven Eternal is just really excellent. 3 mana 2/2 flyer that masses 1, puts 2 bodies in the battlefield for the cost of 3 mana, and also puts an invasive attacker. We do have a hole at 3, so this will be pretty excellent. It's also a great target to put counters on. Otherwise, what is there? Don't think I'm ever splashing for Hawaii's Raptor. This is a card you want to play exactly on 2. We have a Skulker. I wouldn't mind another Visionary. Maybe a Crunch Wrangler goes well with the Bloomhoke, but we don't have a lot of high-powered creatures. So yeah, I'm just happy that this Aven Eternal is still in this pack. Definitely a powerful card in this set. And now what's there's Saheeli, which is great. pretty late Sahili. Do we have enough non-creature spells to get this to trigger constantly? We do have a Guild Globe, we do have Band Together and Jace's Triumph. We have Jiang Yangu as a way to trigger it. Commence the end game. So not a lot, so I don't think it's a pick here. We have quite a number of solid options though. I mean, Kiora's Dambreaker is another nice curve topper that we can use. A 6 mana 5/6 is a really strong body, and the ability to proliferate is excellent. It's kind of the same argument with Bloomhoke, except it's a lot more expensive. We currently didn't pick up a lot of ramp other than Jiang Yangu, so maybe I don't take it here. We already have Commence the Endgame as a powerful late game closer. So what else do we choose? There's a Crunch Wrangler, but again, I don't think we have too many Power 4 or greater cards in this pack, in this draft. There's a Bloomhoke that can trigger this nicely and grow it. There is a Rescuer's Sphinx that that can grow it, but that's not a lot of good reasons to play it. So maybe I just take the Kiora's Dambreaker. Think I like 2 Vivian's Grizzly. I think our 3s are kind of good for now. Our 2s are looking pretty good as well. I don't mind another late game curve topper like Kiora's Dambreaker. We didn't pick up a lot of ramp, but I think this just has a lot more upside than a Crunch Wrangler at 2. Like a 2-mana 2/1 isn't that great, to be honest. You would most likely want a consistent way to grow this. So at the most part, this just ends up being a dead card, even though it's a 2-drop that we can potentially utilize. So yeah, I think I like the Kiora's Dambreaker here. And now what? Well, Callous Dismissal is excellent. Definitely the choice here. We don't have a lot in terms of interaction, and we could use another 3rd spell for interaction. Definitely going to be a pickup. Otherwise, I think it's just going to be Contentious Plan. There's also a late Spark Harvest, but we can't really splash for this unless we want to sacrifice a creature. Like Double Black, again, is a pretty hefty toll to pay for. Relentless Advance is just another 4-drop, pretty mediocre. Does play well with Commence the Endgame as a way to grow in the mass creature, but I think I'm fine without it. I think Callous Dismissal is just the interaction that we are desperately looking for, so let's take it here. And now what? Don't think I'm ever playing 2 Sky Theater Strixes. The best card in this pack is Tibalt's Rager, but we're not in red. Don't ever think I'm splashing first. Maybe just Incursion Crisis can be fine. Another way to put a counter onto a creature and proliferate. Don't mind playing it. So yeah. Oh, now there's a Totally Lost at 5, but that's again another expensive card for a curve topper. I think I just want the Pollen Bright Druid to just get the maximize on our proliferating and counters. And we could use another 2-drop in the early game, so definitely the pick here. How am I a big fan of Time Twist? Not really. Like, I think we pretty much have our deck by now. We're probably not going to play the Gateway Plaza. We probably aren't going to play the Guild Globe unless we pick up a powerful splash card. I already have 2 6-drops, so I don't think I'm splashing the Type Bear Giant. The Mana Geode could potentially help us ramp in the meantime. So that's a consideration. There's also Snare Spinner as another 2-drop, which I wouldn't mind as well. Could just replace the Sky Theater Strix as a way to block the early game. I think our 3s are looking stacked. I don't really care too much about this Mana Geode. Even though we could use some ramp. I think we can get there with 17 lands for the most part. In that case, I think we just want to play a lot of 2-drops to stall in the early game block and then just beat down the opponent in the late game, the flyers and the big creatures and whatnot. So I think I like the Snare Spinner. The second one's good. And now what? There's a Totally Lost as a 5-mana interaction spell, which is quite expensive again. But I don't mind an Iron Bully as a way to put another counter onto a flyer or a creature and punch through for a bunch of damage. Does the same thing almost that the Pollen Bright Druid does, but this kind of has Menace, so it does have a little bit of upside. Or I could just speculate on this Totally Lost as another expensive interaction spell. Quite expensive though, and again we didn't pick up a lot of ramp other than this Jiang Yangu, so probably not. I think we just take the Iron Bully here. Okay, don't think I'm playing any of these. Ooh, I think I can justify taking a Crunch Wrangler now as a filler 2-drop, or I can just take a Casmina's Transmutation as a potential way to deal with God Eternals in case we come up with them. Could be another okay interaction spell because, I mean, at the end of the day, Crunch Wrangler is not that great. I mean, I guess it synergizes with Kior's Dambreaker and Bloomhulk, so wouldn't mind it. I mean, this card isn't that great, to be honest, unless you're going against a God Eternal. There's just too many mass tokens that this gets blanked. There's too many ways that to put counters on the creatures that this kind of gets blanked, so maybe the Crunch is fine. Alright, so I think this draft is pretty good. I think we were in the right colors, but we could have been in white anyways. But I think in the final packs, halfway through pack 2 and 3, I think a lot more better blue cards came up. So I'm happy that we kind of gave up on the white. Now we're looking at 2 cuts. I think this deck is definitely 17 lands with these 2 6-drops. What are the potential cuts? I think Iron Bully is definitely cuttable. Maybe a Courage in Crisis. Maybe just a Gill Globe. I think Gill Globe can be cut simply because it doesn't really ramp us. It does help us fix our mana, but I think we can get there. I don't think we really need it. It's a fine cantrip, and maybe just cut the Sky Theater Strix. So overall, how many ways we have to put counters? We have 4. Let's see. 5 with potential Jiang Yangu, 6 with Courage in Crisis. So we have 6 ways to put counters. How many ways do we have to proliferate? We have Kior's Dambreaker, Bloomhulk. We have Palm Bright Druids by himself. So I think I like the Iron Bully here. So what do we cut? We could just cut a 2-drop, to be honest. Like, I do like the double Snare Spinner. Like, maybe Sky Theater Strix could be pretty decent in this deck, given that we have all these ways to put counters, that the flyer is actually pretty nice. Maybe just cut the Crunch Wrangler. Or maybe we could just cut a 3-drop again. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we just want to put our non-creature spells out of the way for now, just to try to see how many creatures we have. Curve is looking good here. I think Jiang Yangu is something we want to play exactly on 3. Sometimes Courage in Crisis we don't. Sometimes we do. I think I like the Strix in this deck, believe it or not. Like, it does play well with, again, the counters, and is also a flyer. So maybe just cut a 2-drop. Maybe I just cut the Crunch Wrangler, given that it does take a while for us to get our Bloomhulk, Rescue Sphinx, or Kior's Dambreaker, and those are only 3 cards. I mean, it's pretty nice if it lands on the Bloomhulk, to be honest, that this gets a counter Angros. With Rescue Sphinx, it just becomes a 3/2, which is easily blanked. Kior's Dambreaker is pretty nice with this, but I don't think we have enough high power creatures. I think we can just afford to cut a Crunch Wrangler and have 7 early game creatures, 7 early game 2-drops. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 early game 3-drops, and 4 4-drops, 1 5-drop, and 2 6-drops. Yeah, I think this deck looks pretty cool. Happy with how this draft ended, and I think the picture should just be Pollen Bright Druid and what's our mana base looking like. 17 creatures, 6 non-creatures seems decent, and we're pretty much even split. I think I want to prefer blue a little bit more slightly, and that's good, simply because of the fact that we have double blue for Commence the Endgame and Rescuer Sphinx. But overall, pretty solid draft. Maybe I could just cut a Snare Spinner, in fact. Like, how much removal do we have against Flyers? We have Band Together. Callous Dismissal doesn't really remove anything. Sky Theater Strix. We have 1 Snare Spinner. Aven Eternal. So we don't really have a great way to deal with Flyers, I guess. Like, maybe Thunder Drake is fine. Rescue Sphinx. So overall, I think I like the Double Snare Spinner over the Crunch Wrangler. I don't think we have enough high power creatures to justify keeping this. So I think I like this deck. And I'm just going to make a part 2 video. Stay tuned.